Okay, it is 7:02. We're going to go ahead and get started out of respect for the people that were here mostly on time. Welcome. This is our June 2021 FIBI Long Beach meeting, normally located at the beautiful Long Beach Civic Center, our new public library, but of course, for the last 15 months or so on Zoom, as we've all become accustomed to. Perhaps in 1 month, sometime soon, we'll be able to get back together in person, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody again. But for the time being, convenience reigns. If you have not been to a FIBI meeting before, welcome. FIBI stands for For Investors by Investors, and we're a nonprofit real estate investment education club that's all about investor education and networking without the sales pitch. So we do these meetings on the last Thursday of every month, and we just rotate topics that we think investors locally or investing around the country are interested in based off of what we're hearing, talking to people out there. And often it's a panel discussion like it is tonight, because this is a great format to get experience out of a variety of different situations and people. My name is Anthony Walker. If you haven't met me before, I am a local LA area multifamily investor for the most part. My area of choice is the greater South Bay and Long Beach. Most of the properties I own are in Long Beach, but I have some elsewhere as well. I am also the managing broker and CEO of a local brokerage company by the name of Buckingham Investments. And we specialize in helping people learn, plan, and invest in real estate, mostly multifamily properties, but some other asset classes as well here locally in LA County and Northern Orange County. And I am your host. Tonight, we have a super exciting panel for people who are interested in breaking into the real estate investing space. Maybe thinking about getting started, haven't done this before, or maybe you do already own a property and you've done some reading on house hacking. So for those of you that haven't heard of house hacking before or know what that is, that is a lingo that's come into the vernacular just recently. And it's the idea of buying an investment property, but then living there yourself to get your portfolio started in many cases. And there's a lot of compelling reasons to do that, mainly because of the financing options that are available to you if you own or occupy properties that are simultaneously your principal residence and also investment properties. So really interesting topic. The programs out there these days for loans are extremely compelling with the interest rates and the down payments required. So it's a great topic, I think, for where we are right now in the market. We have a group of esteemed individuals who have gone through or are going through this process, some multiple times, and they've learned a ton along the way. This is perhaps one of the more labor-intensive ways to get going in real estate because of the nature of living in your investment property. You tend to get involved. So I thought this would be an excellent group of experience to share with everybody. And we're just gonna have a nice discussion about each person's experience and journey through the house hacking process. Some of these people are years in, some of these people are brand new, and it's gonna be great. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to put that in the chat. We've got our panelists pinned so you can see them, and everyone else is in the gallery. So feel free to turn on your video if you'd like. We'd love to see you. We also will have our Kumo Space networking room available after we do our Q&A at the end of the panel. So if you'd like to do some virtual networking, we have these funny little virtual rooms where you can walk around with your little thumbnail video avatar and talk to people and pour a virtual glass of wine. So that's kind of fun if you haven't done that before. So stick around if you have some time. So let's kick it off. I'm going to ask everybody to introduce yourselves. Just give us a little summary of experience. What interested you in the house hacking strategy to get started? And we'll take it from there. And Robin, I will start with you since you're to my right.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Hi, my name is Robin Ramel Morris. I have been an active investor for, I want to say, about 4 years now with my husband. This is a joint venture that we do. We started our journey off in a RIA initially as wholesalers. That didn't last very long. So we decided on venturing to a long-term plan, something that would build. Our goal was to be able to build generational wealth and prepare ourselves as we go on into life. So we found a long-term strategy, just buying and holding something very lucrative and very exciting for us. Um, with that in mind, we didn't really have much to start with, which what made house hacking very, very interesting for us. Um, we're a couple properties in now. I'm sure we'll get to that, and currently still living in our currently hacking still. I should say. Still hacking.
Nice. Well, thanks, Robin. Adrian, how about you?
So I started in 2015, and my reason for starting was I'm self-employed, so I felt like I was shredding money, paying taxes, and around that time, Anthony's my brother-in-law. So around that time, we were just having conversations in our family about it, and I think you and Meg said like Adrian would be really perfect. It's perfect for her. And so I went and listened to your presentation. I was like, this is stupid. Like this is so easy and so lucrative. Like why wouldn't you do this? So I did an owner occupied duplex, and I'm on to an investment property, a 4-unit, and then I have a single family home now.
Yep. Adrian's my resident shill. She's my sister-in-law, so she has to be nice. She looks like she would actually be my biological sister, but it just worked out that way. Luckily, her sister, my wife, doesn't look exactly like me. That would be a little bit weird. Okay, Chrissy.
Yeah, hi everyone. I actually started out wholesaling as well a few years ago, but then I found Buckingham Investments and, chatted with Anthony and was learning all about multifamily and everything like that. And I'm actually a realtor at Buckingham as well. And so just learning about the plan and everything of what my goals were, house hacking was kind of like the first step that I could take. And so I was really excited to learn about it. And I just bought it my first one this past year. So I haven't even moved in yet, still doing renovations. It's been a little bit of a saga, but that's a little bit about it to get started.
We're going to hear all about that. It's good that you're right in the middle of it. All right, Peter.
Hey guys, Peter Dote. I'm also an agent at Buckingham Investments, and my house hacking experience was a little bit different. It was a rental arbitrage type of play. I had a co-living business in San Francisco where I leased a couple of apartments, well, at least an apartment building, and furnished all the rooms and everything, and I rented the rooms out individually to young professionals who were moving to San Francisco, students, med school students, interns, and stuff like that. I would have loved to have bought my first property there, but it was about like the highest barrier to entry you can find. So it made some sense with just the demand for that kind of housing to rent the rooms out individually and offset my expenses and to live for free there, which was pretty awesome. So definitely a little different. Didn't build any equity or anything, but it was, a strategy that worked for me.
I thought Peter's experience was particularly interesting because, house hacking can mean a variety of things. It doesn't necessarily mean buying your own property, right? I thought that was a creative idea to move into a leasehold and turn that into a business if whatever's going on in your life or the market, right, in San Francisco makes it difficult to buy something. It's still a way you can participate and develop those skills and make some money. So I think that's an interesting way to round out the experience here on the panel. So thanks, Peter. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more detail about the deals. So how did you do your first house hacking deal? Tell us a little bit about the deal, the location, the financing, and what your plan was for the property, and maybe how it went, if it's been a bit, or how it's going right now. And Robin, I'll start with you again.
Sure. So our goal is we're focusing in the Long Beach area, which has a lot of multifamily units. We bought a duplex. Well, actually, we backtracked. We bought a 3-unit using FHA financing. that was our gateway getting into real estate, because my husband and I, we work 9 to 5 jobs, we're W-2 earners, it's in that type of earning situation, it's hard to build that down payment. So having the FHA loan was a great way for us to enter into a market with low down and still get the financing to be able to get in. So we bought a 3-unit, and what made it unique is that one of the units was actually non-conforming. It was actually a garage conversion. So we bought that. We were lucky enough that in that particular case, there wasn't very many buyers because of that unique non-conforming unit. So that got us in, and we were able to acquire it. We lived in it. We renovated the 2 other units, the non-conforming and the other. And basically, our goal was to build equity with it. So with the renovating, funny thing is we renovated the studio ourselves. The unit that we lived in was the more, I want to say, updated one. So we had family help us out with that. And then we got so tired, we said, forget it. Let's get a contractor to renovate the 3rd one, because it's a high learning curve. Like, we went into this with the idea of learning everything as we go along. And that's kind of what we're doing now. We were able to build enough equity and turn the non-conforming unit actually into a short-term rental. So with FHA financing, they tend to be harder to cash flow, but pre-COVID, we had the short-term rental where not only were we able to appreciate after we did the renovation, but we actually cash flowed too with living into it. So that was pretty amazing and exciting to do. And with that property, we actually ended up refinancing. Yeah, we refinanced to get the equity. And later on down the road, I want to say we were in the property for about 2.5 years. We actually sold it to acquire the current property we have now, which we're also house hacking. Another duplex, better neighborhood, larger property, going bigger.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So when you did the FHA loan, did you do 3.5% down?
Yes, we did the 3.5% down as minimal as possible. We noticed with doing that, once you appraise, your appreciation just skyrockets because you just put so much little down. And in our Southern California market, homes are just expensive in general, right? So with having that low down, it gives you the opportunity to build so much equity into that. And that equity was what allowed us to exchange. We actually exchanged the 1031 exchange into our current property. Because the investment size, we were able to use those funds to the exchange, and then the personal profits we used for our personal residence, and use that for like rehab purposes and things like that.
That's awesome. So were you able to get that? You said you were able to get that to cash flow even while you lived there. So were you counting like rent from yourself, or you literally got paid to live in your property?
There were a couple months where we did have to pay into it. That property were all 1 bed, 1 bath. So in a way, I mean, there were some months where we did cash flow, some months we didn't. But in the months we didn't, it was kind of like paying $600 for a 1 bed, 1 bath. Wow. You're really not going to get $600. So technically, yes, that would be negative. But in our market, where are you going to find a 1 bed, 1 bath parking for $600? Yeah, that's a pretty good negative cash flow. Yeah.
So you mentioned then also doing the work, and so you had family start doing that with you. Were you swinging hammers yourself, or were you trying to figure out how to set tile and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we painted. I was doing some paint, and of course our walls were too dark, but it was just a learning experience. Retiling, I think we did the bathroom. I say we because I attempted and did not finish. I had to get family to help. It was quite a lot of trips to Home Depot, and you know that feeling like in Cheers where you walk in and everyone kind of knows your name, and it started becoming like that. Like the cashiers were asking, like, "Hey, you used to come with your daughter. Where's your daughter? And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here way too much.
Yeah,
It is, I want to say it is labor intensive when you're trying to learn and understand the process. And I think that was the best part that we got out of it, because I understand now, like, what are better floorboards, like why there's certain piping you use. And that makes more sense now going into our second property. And when you talk to contractors, like, I'm a little more confident now that I understand that. But, along that whole process, I realized, you work with people who are professionals, so you get the contractor to do that now. You get them to do that stuff. But definitely, it's a high and active learning curve when you are involved with your own property.
Yeah. Probably really useful information to walk away from. So did you say you owned it 2.5 years? Was that your holding period?
Yeah, 2.5 years. So we actually exchanged September of last year. So right in the middle of COVID, as prices were skyrocketing, we figured, you know what, this would be a good time to sell that property and then exchange into something else. With the exchange, we were able to get back a lot of the rehab money that we put into it, received it down, and some extra profits because we appraised so high, with being able to do a lot of the rehab in the beginning when we first acquired it. So it was pretty neat being able to kind of, I want to say recycle, I don't know if that's the right word, but reuse the same money over again. It's an amazing concept to be able to. I definitely would do that again, or continue, and maybe next one, I don't know, we'll see. But it's a good way to just get yourself in. We knew that first property wasn't the one that we were going to stay with forever, but it was a way to make sure we were in and on a playing field with others who acquired properties, maybe the traditional way or with a 20% down.
Right. Sounds like a lot of experience. So when you exchanged, can you talk a little bit about that? Because this was your principal residence too. So
right.
Yeah, were you able to exempt some of the gain and then exchange the rest?
Yes. So this is where you might need to help me with the technical terms. So since we stayed in it for 2 years, I think 2 out of 5 years, you can be exempt because it's a primary residence.
Right.
So let's say 1/3 was our primary residence. The 2/3, the gains of that property, because they were investment, we were able to do a 1031 exchange and use those funds to go towards our current property that we bought. So all those funds went to that, most of those funds. And then the proceeds that were considered part of our primary residence, we got back as profits.
That's awesome. You got to put some cash in your pocket without having to pay taxes on it too.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, the funds that go towards investment property, those capital gains are deferred. Right. So technically, when we got our profits, yes, they're taxed, but it's nowhere near as much as if you were going to get back everything from, like, if it was a single family home. That a larger amount would be taxed compared to the small 1/3 that we were taxed. So you do save a lot of that, and yeah.
What an experience. You got every piece of the life cycle of owning and disposing of a building, and you did it all yourself.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Easier said than done, believe me.
Yeah. That's more bold than I ever did, actually. I never house hacked. So nice job. Adrian, why don't you tell us a little bit about your house hacking deal? Where was it? How'd you finance it? And what did you do?
Yeah, so it was in Westchester, and it was right before, in 2015, right before they started talking about Silicon Beach and like all like Google and Yahoo and whatever. And then the Rams started to come in. So we bought it like right there as all of that news was coming in. So it just went, and I didn't even like realize that was going to happen. So you'll have to help me with the technical details, Anthony, because I totally rely on you for that. I'm like, I trust Anthony, he knows. But I did the FHA loan just putting the minimal amount down.
Yep.
Really didn't have a lot of extra money hanging out. So I just got together the down payment, and it was, you know, it was a little tight for a couple years. And I remodeled my unit and did some basic remodeling to the front unit. And I really loved living there. I had a property management company. They handled things, so I wasn't getting like a knock on the door in the middle of the night. But I probably got more involved in the property than I needed to. Like, I didn't really realize that the property management company could really handle everything. I still had like my hands and stuff, and that kind of overcomplicated things. I think it's better just to like totally hand it over or totally do it yourself. Because then I had to kind of like keep track of things, you know, like Borba had some stuff, but I was paying the gardener, and now I learned. So then I moved out of it, and then I just got this intuitive hit. I was like, this is time. It's time to sell it. And that was like right before COVID started to come on the scene. And I was like, and I talked to you, I was like, I want to sell the duplex, and I want to buy a primary like single family home, and then I want to buy an investment property. And you're like, okay, like it's going to go this, like had to sell the duplex, buy the single family, get the investment property. And we did it all within, I don't know, a few months, right?
It was a lightning round. Yeah.
Lightning round. And it was all happening right when like I sold it a high on the duplex, and then I bought it a low for the single family and the 4-unit.
Perfect
So
timing.
it
So
was-
you did the same thing with your exchange, right? You lived, even though you had moved out and converted it to a rental for a while, you still got to exempt half of your gain, right? And not pay taxes on it.
Yep, exactly.
I love that about this strategy. That's like one of my favorite things. You get to put cash in your pocket when you sell without having to exchange. And then you exchange the other part into a 4-unit pure investment property, right?
Yeah.
And then you had the cash to buy a single family residence for yourself. I love it.
And remodel it.
And remodel it.
Yeah. Like I remember like when we were looking at properties for the single family home, like I remember standing there talking with you, and we were calculating the return on investment. It was something like 385% return on investment. Like it was stupid. We were just like laughing our heads off. Like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like, crazy. So,
We're pretty well. And so to be fair, there were quite a few years in there though, right? That did that. Was that 2014 that you got the duplex? I can't remember.
Oh, it was like literally Christmas of 2014. And
Okay.
I remodeled and moved in 2015, and then sold in 2020.
Yeah. So it was quite a while. The market definitely did its thing. And are you comfortable sharing your original purchase price and your sale price on the duplex?
Yeah. I mean, I think you'll have to like confirm it, but I think it was 745, and then I sold for 1.1, right?
Yeah, I think we sold. Yeah, I think you purchased for about 745 and sold for 1.1 or 1.15.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. I was just like, how is this even happening?
And if you do the math on the 750, right, 3.5% of 750, like your down payment was like something like $30,000 right, when you went in.
It was super low. Like, so for me, the real point was just like to get in the game.
Right.
And so with the tightness that happened in the beginning, you know, the first couple of years, like I was like, that's fine, you know, and if you were just going to calculate it by like the rent that I would have been paying in the area anyway, I was still, my rent or my portion of the mortgage that I was paying was so low, you know, like I never would have been able to have like this beautiful like backyard that was like a wild garden and like, you know, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath and an attached garage and all that stuff. Like I never would have been able to, the rent that I would have paid for that would have been like double what I was paying,
Right.
you know, with my mortgage. Yeah.
So now you split the investment part out, and the part you were living in, and those streams of equity went their own way, and now you have your own house and a separate investment property.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. I see a question in the chat about management for Adrian. We're going to come back to that in a minute because I have a question about management for everyone here, because that's a really interesting topic when you're considering living in your property, whether it makes sense to hire somebody else or do it yourself, and how your experience was. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, thank you. Okay, Chrissy.
Anthony, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
About that, particular play that both of them did. How how does the primary residence capital gains tax exemption, how does that go to into your pocket? How are you able to use that? Because I just imagine it as just cutting down the money that you have to pay.
So it's, first of all, I can't give official tax advice since I'm not a CPA and we're on a recorded line and I have to tell that every time we say things like this. But so the big difference, the big advantage of investing in, beyond the financing of investing in properties that you occupy as your principal residence is you can't exchange, if it's a single family, you can't exchange, right? Because it has to be an investment property to exchange. But instead you get this principal residence capital gain exemption, which means that if you sell a property, if you're single, you can exempt completely up to $250,000 of the gain, or you can, if you're married, you can exempt $500,000 of the gain. And so an exemption is totally different from a deferral, like we usually talk about in the exchange context. When you're exchanging, the money goes into an exchange accommodator's account. You can't touch it. It has to all go into your next purchase, or you pay tax on any cash that you take out to use any other way. You can't really even take cash out to upgrade, say like an upleg property that you're buying for another investment. But that exemption is totally different. You get the cash out of the sale, and if it's under the exemption amount, that if your gain is under 250,000, that's your money. You just get the wire from the escrow company. It goes right back into your account. You can blow it on a car if you feel like it, or you can sit around and buy another property, or you can use half of it to upgrade a property. It's free cash, and it's totally tax-free. So that's really the magic of principal residence sales. You can do that with single family and condos too. But of course, then you're living in the whole thing, right? And so the rule on that, though, is you have to live there 2 out of the last 5 years as your principal residence. So you can do this a few ways. If you're like in Robin and Adrian's case, the way that they calculate that is, I believe they do a pro rata amount of your gain based on the square footage you occupied. Was that how it went in your taxes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in the smallest unit, you're not going to be able to exempt 50% or, whatever, 33% if it's a 3 unit or something like that. In Adrian's case, I think the units were like the same size. So you probably got to exempt 50% of the gain, but you can still exchange the rest. So the part that was attributable to the investment side of the property can still go into an exchange accommodator's account and can still go buy something. Interestingly, that cuts all the math of the exchange in half if we're talking 50-50, right? Because if we sold your property for 1.1, you don't have to go buy another property for 1.1 or more. You only have to go buy another property for 550 or more, because your exchange is only half of the gain and half of the property. So I love that strategy, because you can put some cash in your own pocket. You can go do something else with it. You can use it to upgrade your next property. You can split it into 2 buildings and do like Adrian did and buy a single family residence plus an investment property. The flexibility is amazing. And it's a super powerful way to get going. This also works. You can also have your cake and eat it too in a single family or a condo. And I did this. I had a condo that I lived in, and I moved out, converted it to a rental, did Airbnb, but I sold it while I had still lived there 2 out of the last 5 years. So in that case, my gain was more than 250,000, and I was able to exempt 250,000 and exchange the balance, because it was both an investment property and it had been a principal residence 2 out of the last 5 years. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. That sounds super complicated.
That makes more sense. I get it now.
But don't take tax advice from me. Ask your CPA. So Chrissy, how about you? Let us know what's going on with your deal.
Yeah, well, my overall goals were, I want to live as close to the beach as I can, and I also want to own investment properties. So I chose a duplex over in Lawndale, actually. And getting that deal was actually interesting. I know there's a lot of people that are just starting out, and a piece of advice I would like to say, just tell, as you're going out for offers, tell people what your story is, like, because that's what helped get my duplex. Actually, there was people that offered higher than I did, but the seller actually, they knew my brokerage, they knew Anthony, but also they liked my story of how I was trying to start out and build this rental portfolio. So share your story with everyone that you're putting offers on, with all the sellers you're putting offers to. But now that I have my property, I had tenants in it, and I'm going to be trying to property manage it myself just because I want to see what that entails. And so I had to ask the tenants in the front unit, which I was going to be living in, I had to ask them to leave, and we did relocation fees and everything like that. And they were super sweet and helped them try and find a place to move into. And now that it's empty, I started doing work on it. But unfortunately, I was doing some of that without permits, and the city found out about it. And so now process is stopped, and now I'm going through the whole thing as they've asked me for site plans, floor plans, getting an architect. And so I'm learning a lot right now. But it's been fun. It's been an experience for sure. Some setbacks, which haven't been as much fun, but you just got to keep going through it. Basically, it's take it one step at a time. And in the end, it's going to be amazing. And I'm hoping to do, what Robin and Adrian have done. That's the goal in mind. But it is a hustle. It is tough to get through it sometimes, but it is worth it in the end.
I was really interested to have you on tonight because you're going through it right now. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So you're managing it yourself. You bought it. It was tenant occupied. So let's talk about this for a little bit. So after you closed, how did that go? That's probably what a lot of people are worried about, right? Like, is buying a tenant occupied property and going up and saying, "Hey, I'm going to live there now." Here you go.
Yeah, it was a nerve-wracking conversation, to be honest. But the seller actually knew the tenants. The seller and the listing agent were the same person, so she knew the tenants. So she came with me to actually have the conversation, which was super, super helpful, because she kind of already preempted them of like, okay, this new buyer can come in and either, everything as it is, she can, raise your rent, or she can ask you to leave. So it was very helpful that I had someone that knew the tenants to make that introduction for me. But in the end, it's just, they're people too, it's sad to ask someone to like place that they've been living at, but it's also like, I need a place to live at as well. So it's like, as long as you're being helpful and being kind, and I gave them even more than this, it's usually 60 days to move out, but I gave them 75 just to, make sure everyone felt okay about what was going on. So in the end, it's property management. I feel I'm still learning about it, obviously, right now, but I feel like the best start to it is just having that communication of everyone's human and we all want to, be living together and, be nice to each other.
So you mentioned relocation assistance as well. You had to pay them relocation assistance.
Mm-hmm. So that was about 1 month of their rent.
Got it. Interesting. And then now it's vacant and you're doing work. Mm-hmm. And so what was your idea for your scope of work? What's the plan?
My plan was just to work on my unit, and I was just going to renovate a bathroom, make it a little bit bigger, make a walk-in closet. And I had to move, a sink around and demo a couple walls to make it bigger. Fun fact, in City of Lawndale, you need a permit for everything except if you want to paint or do the flooring or cabinets. So just so everyone knows that, you should check out City of Lawndale, make sure they know what's going on. I thought maybe I only needed it to add on square footage, but you need it for a lot more than that. So check in with your city, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and letting them know. And so, yeah, I got a few contractors, got some bids from them, and we started working, and we also were working on the roof at the same time. And that's when the inspector came to check out the roof. And then they saw me doing work on the inside. So that's what kind of halted everything. Yeah. But again, just have good communication. They originally told me to stop working on everything, but then my roofer went and talked to them and was like, I got my permit for the roof, we're almost done with it. And he kind of smoothed things over with the city so that way we can at least finish the roof. So I didn't have like an unfinished roof for like 10 days or more actually now. So again, good communication with everyone is the best way to go.
And what's the city requiring of you now that, you know, you need to go get permits for all this?
Now I need to not just get the permits, but I have to do a site plan review.
What's
So
that?
now they are asking, a site plan is basically a diagram of everything that is on my property, you know, where the units are, where the utilities are, you know, if there's fences, where the parking is. So it's just a detailed plan of what's on my property. Because apparently City of Lawndale had issues with a lot of unpermitted square footage.
Hmm.
So that's why they're asking for this site plan, so that way they can make sure everything on my property is actually, you know, permitted and up to code. So they were asking for a site plan, and then they also asked for a floor plan as well, so I can show them what exactly I was changing in the bathroom and how that would kind of come out to look like.
Got it. So anything in excess of paint, flooring, and cabinets, and you got to get permits.
Yeah. And probably if I had went to them first, they probably wouldn't have asked me for the site plan. So you live and you learn.
Are you having to hire, you know, an architect to do that, or are you taking a stab at that yourself?
I'm trying it myself. We're seeing how it's going. It's definitely been a process. Like, shout out to all the architects. If anyone's here that's an architect, you have a very hard job. Looking at a lot of numbers and everything, but then I'm having a friend that also does some work drawings and stuff like that. Check it out as well. So he'll check out my work. We'll submit it tomorrow, and then hopefully it'll be okay.
And it's
So.
city by city, right? It's really different kind of which cities are strict about it and which are not. Lawndale happens to be a tricky one. It seems like a lot of that's changed too. Like when you go look at public records, I've noticed you'll go find online records of stuff where somebody basically took like one piece of paper and just like drew freehand what they were going to do. And like, that's it. They got the stamp. And now it's totally different. It's so much more stringent.
I even found, like, I not found, but I asked the old seller if, like, oh, can I have your site plans from when they added on the back unit actually. So they added that on in like 2004. So I was like, oh, can I have your site plans? That way I can show the city like what's on my property, because it's the same thing. But the city was like, no, you need to create new site plans. So at least I got to use that as a starting point. But as far as, you know, being, you know, very strict about everything, you can't just draw it on a little thing anymore, unfortunately, or even, you know, show what's there from an old one. You got to do a brand new thing.
Some sort of design program to make that happen.
Yeah, I found one online, smartdraw.com. There's some free ones out there too. So, I mean, why not give it a try? And then if they push it back at me, then I'll pay the money to get an architect to do it too. But yeah, it's always worth a shot. You never know.
Wow. Yeah. You're really getting a lot of learning going on in this situation. I think it'll work out great though. You're gonna have a beautiful unit when you're done.
Oh, thanks. I'm going over there tomorrow to just start prepping the walls for paint, because at least I can do that while we're waiting on the construction stuff. So
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for sharing all of your trials and tribulations. Peter, so let's talk a little bit about your idea. What was the genesis of your idea? How did it come together? You know, what happened? How did the deal go?
Yeah, so I moved to San Francisco after college in 2015, and at the time, it was very impacted. I mean, it still is, but maybe not as much since COVID. But so many jobs, tech jobs, and people moving there for work, and just way more jobs than there was housing. So finding a place was very difficult. And I knew some friends who were living in an 8-bedroom apartment, and I found their leasing agent. We're kind of saw what he was putting out there, and they had another 8-bedroom, and it was just myself and 2 other friends, and it was the nicest apartment we found, and the price per bedroom was pretty doable for us. So we ended up finding 5 more people to live with and leased the 8-bedroom, and which sounds ridiculous, but you know, it was actually great. And it was interesting just to see how The owner of that property, he's a big investor up there, was converting like 3 and 5 bedroom apartments, taking them and chopping them up into 8 bedrooms or 10 bedrooms. Sometimes not fully permitted, but creating more housing. And millennial tech workers coming out of college didn't mind living in a small room if it was cheap and it was clean. And so it was also perfect for co-living too. So our neighbor downstairs, he was the master tenant, and it was actually a 14-bedroom apartment. And he was renting all the rooms out individually on Airbnb, which was kind of still a new idea. I mean, Airbnb's been around for at least 10 to 15 years, but it was still like not as big as it is now. But he was renting them all out individually and not really managing it well. It was pretty dirty. He was never there, but it was always full. And we would go down there and see, people from Europe and South America and coming and staying on a short-term rental basis all the time. And we would hang out down there. And eventually I got to thinking just how much demand there was for that kind of housing, for the short-term housing. And that it was like, well, if this guy is doing it and, it's full, and I could sort of pencil out how much he was making, and seeing how poorly he was managing it, I was thinking, well, I'm going to go do this myself. This is a great opportunity, and I'm going to improve his model. So the same landlord, same owner, he's got tons of these buildings. I found another one over in the Castro district in Eureka Valley, the neighborhood of Eureka Valley, which is like near Twin Peaks, if you know the city. It's a nice little neighborhood. And first I leased an 8-bedroom, and then I furnished all the rooms. So I needed some capital. I liquidated some of my investments I had, and then my mom lent me some money too for the security deposit and the first month's rent. So then I bought all the furniture. A lot of it was from Craigslist, like IKEA beds, desks. I tried to get like nice, like wood desks, like some solid furniture and stuff, to just try to like create sort of a higher quality vibe than just the bare bones IKEA stuff that some of the other guys had. And it was nice, it came out really nice. And I created all my Airbnb listings, and everything was done on Airbnb at first. And it was short-term rentals. And the plan was initially to get my short-term rental permit while I was doing it. Turned out that took longer than I thought. And in the process, I got flagged by the city. They said that somebody anonymously reported me, but they started shutting me down before even like I hit 6 months. So I had to pivot my model at that point to 30-day minimum, which actually turned out great. But I could get into that later. But essentially, I set it up that way for Airbnb. I had 8 bedrooms, and then later the unit above me vacated, and I expanded up there. It was 5 bedrooms up there. So I had the whole building. It was 13 bedrooms. And it was, mostly millennial tech workers coming to the city for a new job. They needed housing quickly, within a few weeks. Like, hey, I'm starting a job, in 2 weeks. I need a place to live, at least for a month or two, while I look for a permanent place. That was really kind of the solution I was providing for people. So no financing, it was just cash. It was no buying of the property, but I knew the leasing agent already from my previous residence and had a relationship with him. So he trusted me that I was going to be able to make this happen, because it was kind of definitely very risky, I'd say. Signing a year lease, and my rent was $10,000, like almost $11,000 a month for the 8-bedroom. So I had to come up with that every month. And then when I got the 5-bedroom, then it was 17 grand a month
Wow.
for the whole thing. So like if you just run the numbers on that, like the GRM is pretty good for that owner. So the whole time I'm just thinking about how can I be the owner eventually? You know, how can I be doing what he's doing? And I just thought it was so smart, converting these units into 8 bedrooms, just adding bedrooms, you know, creating more housing out of existing supply. And, you know, obviously the demand was incredibly high, so he was renting them out easily. But just, and the real estate was so expensive, so the barrier to entry is super high. But if you're able to get into that in that kind of an environment, then the numbers can be really good in very expensive housing, you know. So it's just kind of an interesting, unique situation. I would love to find some kind of situation like that here. I don't know how it would translate down in LA, but yeah, I was able to do that for a while until COVID hit, and then it shut down.
I think that's a really interesting strategy as you describe it for like a high barrier to entry market. And I think it's great creative thinking, right? A lot of people, you go to these seminars and you read a bunch of stuff and people end up feeling like, well, I really need to go to some other state in order to afford to invest at all. And I love the creativity of figuring out a way to do it in any market. If you can do it in San Francisco, especially pre-COVID, right, and you can find a way to make money, you can do that anywhere. So I love that. What was occupancy like if you're doing short-term rentals? Were you pretty much full all the time, or did you keep records on that?
Yeah, I usually would have 1 or 2 rooms open when I was doing long term, but it was seasonal as well. So it was much more flexible with short term because, you know, somebody would book for a week, and then somebody would book for, you know, 2 weeks or a couple of days. And it wouldn't be such an issue to have, you know, a small gap between reservations. So somebody else could go book that little gap. When I had 30-day minimum, I had to work really hard to make sure the reservations were back to back,
Right.
because I couldn't afford to have like a 25-day gap because I couldn't fill that. So I had to really manipulate things with my Airbnb calendar to make sure that I didn't get stuck with a vacancy that I couldn't fill. And then I couldn't cancel reservations because I would lose my Airbnb superhost status, which was like, you know, a lot of credibility for bringing in people. But December and January were definitely difficult. So I had to plan ahead for the holidays. People would leave and I would be short on rent for January. So I would have to save some money for that, allocate for that. And I was able to, but it definitely got a little scary a couple months where, you know, I wasn't going to make enough. And then other months where, you know, I made a lot. So like summer, stuff like that. So I'd say that the occupancy was probably like around 85% on average.
What were you able to charge for rent for a bedroom?
It was anywhere between 1,800 and 2,400 at the max. Yeah. So it was.
And what would a 1-bedroom apartment go for in the same neighborhood for those of us that aren't familiar with that market?
A 1-bedroom would probably go for $3,000.
Wow. So you're getting a lot of arbitrage by providing furnishings and allowing the short-term nature of the rental.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was so difficult to get a place, let alone find the roommates and everything for a lot of these guests, that, you know, just being able to just, you know, click and book it and have something secured. Now, I had to make sure that they felt safe and felt comfortable living with all these people, because it was the 8-bedroom. You're with 7 other strangers from, you know, from everywhere. So I didn't have as many problems as you might expect, because most of them were working a lot, making a lot of money. They were all coming from a similar, you know, situation. And So I didn't have too many problems with my guests, but I definitely worked really hard on making sure that everybody was comfortable with each other and got to know each other. And so it was like a total extra level of management that was required there.
It's like Big Brother, right? Like the show.
It was like a boarding house, honestly. It was.
I didn't even think about those aspects of it, but yeah, I guess you're managing personalities as well as your finances and everything.
Right.
How
Yeah,
many
somebody just
bathrooms?
asked about the bathrooms.
Yeah.
So that was a big factor in choosing the place. So there were 3 bathrooms in the 8-bedroom. So that was enough so that only one of them was shared by 3 people. The others were shared by 2, which I thought was good enough for, hold on. No, I'm actually, I forgot. It was actually 4 bedrooms in the 8. Actually 4 bedrooms in the 8, 2 in the 5. So in the 5, there was only 1 bathroom total that was shared by 3.
Nice.
So that worked out pretty well. And the bathrooms, I was like very meticulous about keeping clean. So it was like a lot of cleaning going on. But you know, it generated a lot of income, so it really made it all worth it, and it was a really fun experience too.
That sounds pretty fun. Was there parking?
So yeah, actually, we were really lucky to live on a low key, not a through street. It was ended on a cul-de-sac, and it was in a low key neighborhood, and there was actually street parking there, which was like extremely rare for San Francisco. And then I had a couple of garages, but I pretty much used that for storage, and but we would park in front of the garages, and so it was adequate. Most people didn't have cars though. You didn't really need a car, but I'd say, you know, people that had cars were able to get parking, so it was
Right. Interesting. Yeah, wow. What was your total startup cost, if you recall?
It was about 45 grand to start, and then that's including the security deposit and everything. And then when I expanded, it was like another maybe 10 grand to furnish that and everything. So, but you know, there were times where I lost money, or you know, had to borrow some money from, or you know, go into the next month and use some of the income from the following month to pay that month's rent. It ended up working out fine, where I didn't lose anything until COVID. I lost some, but it was about 50 grand maybe total, but I was probably cash flowing about 4 or 5 grand a month on average. So not a ton, but I was also free rent for me. So on top of
you cash flow and on a leasehold investment too. That's awesome. I'd call that a win.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I wish that I had equity in it, because I think about all the rent I paid to that owner over time, and I, you know, paid down at least, you know, like 40% of the price of the home, so price of the place. So he made a lot of money off of me, and I was just kind of scraping a little off the top of it.
And he didn't mind, I suppose.
Yeah, it worked for him.
He knew what was going on.
Yeah, he knew what was going on. I actually talked with him before, and he had other units where people were doing a similar situation. And honestly, I don't think he could find a group of 8 or 14 people very easily. So somebody like me coming in and running an operation was perfect for him. And I was the master tenant, so he would talk to me instead of having all the other, you know, other tenants like coming to him with issues. It was just me, so that worked pretty well.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, we even see like with 3-bedroom units, those can stay on the market for a bit longer than your average. So I can't imagine with an 8-bedroom unit.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. A little something different compared to all the others that we have here. So let's talk about management, because Peter, you were kind of on that already, and we touched on that on some of these others. So Robin, you managed your building yourself, right? And
yes.
Yeah, how'd that go?
So our first, the first property, we self-managed. This was actually before California rent control came in. So one of my contingencies when we bought the property is that it was going to be delivered vacant because we weren't sure which unit we wanted to stay in yet. So after we finally decided that we had to, get tenants, so we self-managed. We interviewed and was able to fortunately rent out to a good couple who's actually, I think, still in the property right now. I think the biggest part about managing, and Christy mentioned that, is you do have to have good communication, and because you are hacking, you're gonna see them quite often. It's almost kind of like mixing business and pleasure in a way, because not only do they know that you are the owner, they're going to go to you for any issues that arise, but you're going to have interaction with them as also their neighbor. So it's kind of a unique circumstance. You're not hands off, you're not able to just hide and save face. You're there, you're upfront. So you there's a sense of accountability, I want to say. As you as a property owner, you hold yourself accountable to the tenants that are renting from you, because they know who you are and they know how to reach you. But I think it works out well when you are very good at picking out your tenants. And our other unit, the non-conforming that we turned into a short-term rental, we use very similar platforms like Peter, like Airbnb, VRBO. And so that process was a little bit different. But we did eventually, once COVID hit, we turned it into, I guess, a medium-term rental. We started renting out to nurses who were traveling nurses who are coming to the area. So the whole rental process started up with that again. And it was a pretty similar, just, going through a rental agreement, understanding what their purpose is in your property, and communicating what your goal is too. This time around, in our current property that we're staying, we actually have a property management team managing our other unit. Now, I know it sounds a little awkward, like why would we have that when it's just us? We manage two other units, why just one? In our circumstance, when we acquired the property, one of our contingencies with our seller was he was supposed to deliver one unit vacant so we can move in. However, I think, and I wish I had a situation like Chrissy, where actually the owner and the agent, I don't think, I guess they rubbed the tenants wrong. They were one of those owners where they weren't very hands-on and just kind of got rental checks, and that was about it for the interaction. So when the owner finally said, hey, the new owners are coming in, they put their foot down. So we ended up having to do cash for keys for the process. However, the deal, our property, it was too good of a deal to pass up. I did not want to pass up this deal. And so we switched things around. And I think this is where, with house hacking, you have to be adaptable to what comes around, because things just happen, just like COVID. It could just happen to snap, and you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to switch up what you got to do. And because the owner was not successful, and we were personally successful because the tenants were rubbed the wrong way, we needed a property management team to come in and help us out. Good thing about it was, because the owner was not successful, we got credit. So that kind of helped with the cost of acquiring the property. And we, the property management team was able to help actually get them out. And we did do cash for keys for a lot less than what we would have had to do if it was just us ourselves. So again, for us, it was working with the right people who are pro at what they do and do that. So right now, we do have a lease with the property management team who's still managing our other unit, but it's been a really good working relationship. In our case, we're a little unique. I tend to be very hands-on. I like being involved. So they hear from me every now and then, and we work out some type of relationship where they know what we're doing, and they have their goal, as a team with what they're trying to pursue as well. I mean, ultimately, it was about making sure that no matter who the tenants were taken care of, because you are in a human sense, you are putting a roof over their head. You're providing one of the most important uh, needs for survival. So you have to be able to keep that in mind, no matter who comes in, whether it's a 3-day trip from a person who's renting from you from Airbnb, or a nurse, or someone else who needs a place to live with their family. Like, you keep in mind that these people are human. You're human too, and you learn, and you make mistakes, and things happen. But ultimately, your goal is to make sure everyone has a roof over their
That's,
head. Yeah.
that's looking at red numbers and pro formas. When you
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
So do your tenants then know that you're the owner now that they have a management company interfacing with them?
Yeah, they know we're the owner because it's a upstairs downstairs type of living situation. So we're there, and they've seen us around with when we were rehabbing our unit. So they know who we are. Or at least I think they do. But I don't know if like the neighborhood knows, because we have the property management, like their little billboard that says their name like on top of like right above our door. So I think it confuses people, but I guess that would be my way of saving face for the people down the street. Yeah.
Curious on the traveling nurse tenant pool. Are you hooked up with an organization to find those tenants, or do you just post that somewhere to get those people? That sounds like an interesting strategy.
Yeah, so I actually work in the healthcare field. So I do know people when COVID hit, a lot of nurses, they wanted to stay separate from their families when, everything was just such an unknown. So for my own personal social media, like on Facebook and Instagram, I was actually posting out that way at first.
Got it.
And my first nurse was actually my cousin's coworker. So that was a good introduction with the nurses, because it was kind of someone I would get to know. But eventually we ended up using, I think it was called Furnished Finder or Nurse Finder. Um, but it's not just nurses who use that. Like, I think we also had inquiries from like other business professionals who were just traveling down the area, like who had like an internship with a particular company, and they needed like 2 months, things like that. Just kind of like a middle term type of stay, not too long, but they were definitely all over 30 days.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We have a good question. If your house actually, so you're living in one and the property manager's managing the other, are they charging you a fee for the unit you're living in, or just the other one?
Our particular agreement, it is a percentage of the total. It's either a percentage of the total cost or like a minimum fee. So I think it would depend on the property management team you're working with. But when we made our agreement, because we're only managing one unit, um, the percentage fee, if this makes sense, would be much higher than what their baseline fee is.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're just paying the baseline fee.
Got it. That makes
But
sense.
I don't mind, because it's the other unit, and I'm gonna write it off come tax season. So I'm kind of okay with that. It's gonna come back anyway, so I don't mind.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that sounds like an interesting breadth of experience for you too with management.
Yeah, so kind of have both perspectives.
Yeah, really, you got to do it both. So Adrian, I think you're kind of in a similar position, right? You chose to use management right from the beginning on yours. How did that go?
You know what? It was really helpful for me because I didn't know anything about like picking tenants, or, who would I call if there was a plumbing issue? Like, I just didn't have any context because I'd never owned a home before. And I was running my own practice. I'm a therapist, and so I'm running a whole other business. Like, it was ridiculous, like trying to remodel a place and working full time, and then working, like then trying to put tenant management on top of that. Is like, I was already overloaded with just my one business, so for me it was kind of like, it's just a no-brainer. Like, there was no way that I was going to get up to speed and I was one person, you know, I didn't have a partner that was doing it as well. So for me, that's just what made sense. And I was happy to offload that. And
You feel
again,
like you got, like they took care of everything for you?
yeah. And again, I did too much. Like I would just recommend like giving everything. Like if you're going to do that, like just give everything, and just not mix it up. I just didn't know. Um, and now I have, with my 4-unit, Forba is managing it. And like I was just telling you today in the beginning, like I got a message from the property management, and they were saying that there were tenants fighting, the upstairs and downstairs are fighting, and then somebody like they call the police on each other, and there's been like all this drama that I had nothing, I didn't even know anything about. And I'm like, thank God I didn't know anything about that. I don't want to deal with it. Like, just no. So for me, it's really been a godsend. And they've, you know, when they come to me with decisions like, you know, can we put a ceiling fan in here? They're really good about asking like how much to spend. And I'm like, be humane. This is people's freaking home. Like, don't put it so that they can't open a window and it's super hot in Long Beach. Like that's not humane.
Right.
Like get the upgraded thing for sure. You know, and people they're like surprised by it. They're like, oh, like we thought you would definitely say no to that. I'm like, it's reasonable and humane. Like, of course. Like let's spend the money. Like let's make sure that people are happy and like provide safe, good like accommodations.
I love your example. Sometimes the best is when you, realize that you didn't get the call, right? That's the real, that's what you're paying for.
They don't stress me at all. So they just say, hey, this upgrade needs to happen. Here are the 2 estimates. Which one do you want, A or B? For me, it's a 2-second thing. A. That's it. So for me, that's really been wonderful.
So in my head, I'd be super tempted if I lived in one unit of a duplex and say like maybe the tenant wasn't there when I bought it or something. I'd be really tempted to pretend to be a renter. Is that they know?
I tried to.
Yeah.
Duplex. I tried to, and the people who moved in front, you know, nosy neighbor. Like the dude was up in everybody's business. He knew everything that happened. So he, like, I'm sure he looked me up on the MLS or whatever, and he knew that I was the owner. And he would like come to me with stuff. He's like, I don't want to bother you, but like, can I build a fence? And like, he would totally like come with his like overalls and like clipboard and stuff. And I'm like, but luckily he like for like plumbing and stuff, like he would go to some, you know, go to the property management company.
Hard to avoid, I guess. Nice. That's great. So Chrissy, we talked a little bit about your experience taking your building over since it's new. What about the other existing tenant? How's that been as far as just like learning how to manage stuff for yourself and dealing with them and collecting rents and everything?
That's been fine. I mean, the back tenant is also a mechanic though, so he had a lot of car parts and frames of cars, and like he also pays more to for the carport, which is fine, but then it was just a lot of stuff like along the fences, like in between the building and the fence. So I've had to have the conversation with him a few times, like we need to clean this up, we need to keep cleaning this up, and he's cleaned up like parts of it here and there, but I'm like, you got to keep going, like. But he's the sweetest man. He's like, do you ever need help on your car? Like, I can help you. So it's just, you know, keeping that good communication, you know, going. And when I first took over the property, he was very low, below market rent. So I actually did have to raise his rent and I had that conversation with him as well. But he was just so happy to stay in the property that he like gave me a hug. Like, so
You didn't
again,
get
just
tap on the shoulder to go, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then he's talked to me a couple times like, oh, you know, our mail keeps getting like sent over to your, you know, in front of your property. Can we do something to help this situation out? I was like, of course. Like, again, like you want to be humane. Like if I want my mail to be put in my mailbox, he wants his mail put in his. So now we're trying to figure out like, you know, a little diagram to send for the mailman stuff. So it's just keeping that communication open.
Nice. Yeah, that's key. Peter, anything, we talked a lot about management when you were introducing your deal. Anything additionally that you would add about managing your big brother house?
Yeah, I was in an interesting situation because in the eyes of the tenants, I was kind of the landlord and the manager. But I was kind of an intermediary because the owner actually had his own property management team that was like built into his business, and I would go to them for bigger fixes and stuff. And the place wasn't built super well. I think there were some issues that came along at times. We had a couple of leaks that were like pretty traumatizing for a couple of guests in the middle of the night, like rain coming in through a light fixture down onto the bed, and that was kind of a challenge, getting that fixed, certain things like that. But they would come fix a toilet if it was broken. I generally would fix most stuff, but like I could call them and have them come, so it was nice. But yeah, that's kind of the situation it was.
Yeah, I guess being in the middle of it could get tricky, but that's good. Sounds like it worked out.
Right.
Okay, let's see here. Let's talk about renovations a little bit. We touched on this in a lot of people's kind of rundowns, but Robin, I know you did a lot of renovations, and you said you started with some yourself, friends and family. What was the scope of what you did? If you're willing, maybe share, the budget, what you spent on that first property.
Oh gosh. Can't remember the exact numbers, but for the non-conforming unit, funny enough, that was probably the better looking unit. So I think the previous owner was just trying to keep it low key because he was actually renting that out to family and friends. So there's risk with using that as a rental. But for that one, my husband and I, Lawrence, it was our fathers that renovated that. So it was more cosmetic, paint, baseboards, things like that, just to make it more aesthetically pleasing. Our unit, again, was more cosmetic, but Lawrence and I tried to do that, and that's where we learned. Some tile were kind of mismatched, but you can't tell from far away. It's the DIY project, that you kind of just learn from going, as you go along. We painted our walls, we did a little bit of bathroom, but we pretty much kept the same layout. We didn't break down any walls or anything like that. The third unit, the one that we used the contractor for, reason for that was one, we were already burnt out. And then on the personal side, I had my first child when we acquired that property. So I was, tending to her and then trying to clean a bathroom, while she's sleeping and things like that. So it kind of got to me. It was time to hire professionals to do that. And I'm kind of glad we did, actually, because that one was the worst, I guess, of the three units. It did need more work. We redid the bathroom, all new fixtures, new cabinets in the kitchen, and then we did vinyl planks, like the vinyl waterproof planks, and like the important areas, like the bathroom, kitchen, laundry area. And with that, just rehab in general, you come up with surprises. So luckily, we did have contingency money, and we had to redo the plumbing underneath. The home was, I think, from 1920, so it was time. It definitely needs some plumbing redone, but that was the largest as far as the scope for that property. Our current one, we only renovated our current unit that we did, but in that process, because we are downstairs, we redid the plumbing too. And I mean, plumbing is expensive, but the goal with being able to do that now is we're hoping this property is the one that once we move out of, we're going to hold. So we want to make sure it's well taken care of throughout the years that we keep it. So that was definitely a play for the long run and managing it, making sure there's no issues down the line. This particular unit, also from the 20s, we actually did open up the walls, so now it's a more of an open concept. A lot of these homes are compartmentalized, very, very small. And so opening up the rooms, it gives it a bigger feel, brighten up the walls. My walls are not dark gray anymore. They're bright white. I got better vinyl planks. But as far as budget, I want to say for the first property, it was about, I want to say we spent, kind of embarrassed to say because we did spend a lot because we were learning, about maybe 40 grand for all three.
That's
Yeah, but this is not including like furnishings when we did the short-term rental. I would consider separate. But then luckily when we did do our 1031 exchange, we got our profits back. A lot of that came back was, if you think about it, was our rental rehab money. So that was pretty cool. And so when we renovated our current project, we used that money again to rehab our unit. So it was kind of nice being able to, just have that money work for you again. And that's the idea that I love about, real estate investing, and just being able to use that money and have that money work for you. Because now I didn't have, since we had that first property, I didn't have to come up so much with like money again. Like, where am I going to get 40 grand? Just, in the span of a month when we were going through escrow. I had that sitting for when we did our exchange. That was the most exciting part for me going into this second phase, of our FHA properties, that we knew we were going to have this money, have it prepared and ready to go and do it all over again.
They always say this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Handles itself.
Absolutely.
I love it. I'm curious. So you mentioned you had to redo the plumbing in the first building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do a full supply line replacement, or how much did you do on that?
Well, luckily the supply lines for the unit we were living in was okay. I think that must have been redone with a previous owner that we acquired the property from. It was just the other unit, and that had older plumbing, and then the main line that went to the street. It was like an old cast iron plumbing, and I think someone in the past did a hack job and tried to cover up cracks with cement. Now, mind you, learning process, I don't know if that was the best way how you should treat it, but it just didn't look right. So we had to redo that over. And again, you do something like that when you're getting ready to sell the property. I could show the next buyer, like, hey, you know what?
Right.
This property is a great deal for you to still get, because look, now you have new plumbing. This is why I'm asking for this much. It kind of helps. I see it as a way to prepare yourself for the sale, or in our case with our current property, for the longevity of the property that I get to hold it for.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, recycling the same funds. That's the best.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian, let's talk about your remodels a little bit. So you got the first duplex, and I know you remodeled the unit you lived in, right? How much did you do there?
Maybe like 10 grand. It was pretty cosmetic.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't too much. And then I did the at the time the city of LA had like reimbursements for drought resistant gardening. So got some funds from there to do the yards, which is like the front and the backyard. And that like paid off so much. Like when I exchanged the property and kept some of the money, like when I bought the 2 new properties for my single family home, I probably spent 50 to 60 grand redoing it. And it was like a massive, like literally like everything is redone. Like the whole house is redone. I mean, you've seen it.
Yeah, it's great.
And that money again, like, like what you were saying, Robin, it's just the money just gets recycled and used again.
Have you remodeled any units in your 4 unit yet?
Yeah, one of them, so there had been a tenant for like 20 years, and they gave notice like right away when the building was sold. So we had to renovate that. But then that also means you can ask more in rent.
Yep.
So
you get to raise those rents.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Christy, so you said you're just changing some stuff with the bathroom walls and reconfiguring a little?
Yeah, that one, I have to move the toilet around, move the sink around, and unfortunately I have like slab foundation, so that meant cracking through the concrete to move some things. So and the walls, so it was about, I think it was about 15,000 for that, which is a little bit more on the expensive side for a bathroom, but just because I had to do those things.
And you're gonna live there too, so you can make it nice.
Exactly. I'm like, it's gonna be my own master bathroom, so that'll be the nice part. And then I'll probably do the kitchen and the flooring for the rest of the the building and the rest of my unit later on. But I just wanted to at least have a nice bathroom to start with.
Totally. So Peter, I know you obviously didn't remodel your leasehold building, but you also just invested in another property.
Yeah.
You have plans to remodel that, or any experience there so far?
Yeah, we've got some extensive plans. All of the units, a 4-unit building. The unit interiors are pretty distressed and really need to be updated. And we like to do that as soon as we can, but we're a little limited as far as like getting in there and getting, tenants out. So we're going to do the roof very soon. The electrical is mostly good. I think some of the wiring needs to be updated at some point, which we'll do down the road. And then there's a 4-car detached garage with a laundry room in the back. And we eventually plan on, when I say we, it's my mom and I, eventually plan on turning that into 2 ADUs. So,
Nice.
but we're going to wait on that for a little while and focus on getting those more demanding things like the units fixed first. Yeah.
ADUs are a popular topic these days. I think Adrian's looking at that too, right? Yep. Very cool.
Well, now talking with you, like thinking about ADUs for both the single family and my 4-unit.
You could. Yeah. I'm closing on one tomorrow that I'm doing them on too.
Okay.
We're going to keep those architects busy. Nice. Well, we're approaching an hour and a half, so I don't want to belabor the point too much more on the panel discussion, and I want to get everybody to networking. But before we adjourn our talk, I'm going to skip to my last question that I had prepared and ask each of you, what's the single most important thing you learned through your house hacking experience that you would have liked to know going in? I'm going in reverse order this time, just to mix it up a little bit. So I'm going to start with Peter.
Okay. Yeah, this one's a little tough because I think had I known how hard it was going to be and all the challenges I was going to face, I probably would not have done it. It probably would have scared me out of doing it. But if I had to choose one thing, it would be, working as a solo entrepreneur, building systems up front so that you can replicate things down the road. So like anything that I did, and I didn't do this all in the beginning, and this is why I wish I had known, but down the road, I eventually began, like whenever I was doing something new, I would document that process so that later when I was doing it again, I could refine it and then get it to the point where it was seamless down the road, because you can't do everything in the business as a solo entrepreneur. You want to be working on growing the business and working on the business, not in it. So I would say just building those systems and, having a documented process, like for whatever you're doing, day-to-day stuff, that then you can sort of decentralize yourself from having to do everything and being able to hand those off to other people or, make it easier on yourself down the road.
Systems. I love it.
Yeah.
If only I had started systems in my businesses earlier. Awesome. Okay, Chrissy, what's the single most important thing you learned through your own experience that you would have liked to know going in?
Probably everything about the renovation process in general and dealing with the city. I think I've learned definitely, like, I'm not going to know everything, obviously. It's hard to learn those things or know them beforehand, but I think I should have asked more questions to my contractors and about timing and like how things kind of worked with the city and stuff like that. I feel like I should have known a bit more about that before just being like, okay, let's start, So
Good advice.
just ask more questions.
So we're getting a lot of questions for contractor and architect recommendations and so on and so forth. So Malcolm's going to post all of our panelist emails in the chat in case you're curious about asking for some recommendations. We definitely have people that can do this kind of work. I would say it varies depending on the job and where it is and what your scope is. I don't want to just throw a bunch of people's information in the chat that aren't on our meetings. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to anyone. I'm sure they'd be happy to share. We got a couple people from Buckingham here, and then obviously Robin and Adrian are long-term clients here. So, and I'm happy to share information too if you send anything to me.
Real quick.
Adrian, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, Robin and Adrian, we don't have your emails, so if you want to share yours in the chat, feel free to do so.
Oh, sure.
So, Adrian, what's the single most important thing you learned through your own experience that you would have liked to know going?
Most important thing to me is recognizing that I have, running a business myself, and that was like so much. I was already so overwhelmed, and then beginning this process, even just going through like buying a place and all that stuff and setting everything up, just like really understanding this amount of space I had for it, and then putting support in place, like working with the right people. Like when I did the work on my single family home, the contractor, Milton, was like freaking amazing. Like he thought about things that I would never have thought about. So like really relying on like other people in the process who know what they're doing and that I feel good with, because a lot of times when I try to hire people, they'll like not show up on time, or they'll like flake out on things, and I didn't have a lot of flexibility to be dealing with that. And so I needed, it was important to me that I worked with people who were like on it, who are straight, who are super reasonable, like all that I really liked working with, because I didn't have time to mess with conflicts or things that weren't matching up. So it's really about like that support and setting myself up to have an easy like escrow process or easily handle problems that are going to arrive. There's always some kind of glitch that happens. Like there's always something going on. So really having the people, and really like having you in the process. Like I think I've said to you a million times, like, I don't know if I'm getting special treatment because I'm your sister-in-law, or if this is what you do for everybody, but you have been a lifesaver. And I think that that's what you do for all your clients, because I even have friends that are clients and you always help them so much. So, yeah.
Everyone gets the same service from the whole team, of course.
Awesome.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, if you don't mind throwing your email in the chat in case people want to talk to you about your job, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then Robin, what's the single most important thing you learned through your house hacking experience you would have liked to know going in?
I would say patience, because our strategy is using FHA financing. There were each scenario, we've put in so many bids to so many different properties, and you have to have I would think you have to have an agent broker. And I want to just say shout out to Cody for this, because who is patient with you in this process. Because I think in each time we put out, I want to almost say maybe at least 10, 15 bids using FHA financing. And sometimes would even be the highest bid, but would get turned down because sellers would see, oh, they're using FHA. No, I don't want them. There's a risk there, With the process with FHA, inspection, the appraisal, I think not the appraisal, but the inspection process is a little bit different than regular conventional, when you buy something conventional. So a lot of sellers are scared that you are going to be a risk, when acquiring the property. They think that you might either fall out of escrow or something, So it's just trusting the process, knowing that the right one is going to come around or still stick around for you in all of this, which makes me think, Christy, I might hit you up for how you explain to your buyer how you got it, because I would try writing letters like saying, hey, this is my family, this is what we want to do, and just got shut down a few times. So like the whole letter process just for some reason did not work, or I wasn't conveying myself well. I don't know, but doing the FHA process, like financing, it's hard, especially if you don't have anything in the beginning, and to be honest, that's really how we started. We didn't even have a down. We luckily, on a side note, we were able to get the down payment through a private investor, someone who actually did help us out. We put together terms and were able to acquire a down payment and still use FHA financing and still pay back, our lender who helped support us in the beginning of the process. And it just took a lot of patience and making sure that we knew the right property was going to come along after rejection, after rejection, after rejection, after writing a letter and get rejected. But you know, someone out there will trust you. There's going to be a property that may scare people like our first with the non-conforming unit that no one wanted to touch. You know, and it's going to be the one that's going to work out for you. Or even our current one, like it would the current one we have, we actually got rejected first, right? I mean, you know, I think someone else, the buyer, the seller picked someone else, and I'm pretty sure it's probably because there may not have been an FHA finance option, you know, maybe not, but we weren't first in line either. So it just was the process in acquiring each and every property. But when you finally do the numbers and all that, it works out. It really does.
I love that. It's so tempting to feel like, well, I can't possibly buy with FHA in this market because the real estate market's insane. And yeah, the real estate market is super competitive right now. But I think that's great advice, like with the non-conforming unit, or if you're just getting beat out on brand new stuff that's coming on the market that's got 10 offers, look at some properties that have been on the market for a while, and maybe the seller's willing to look at an FHA offer at the right price and, you know, get creative with your thinking. It's definitely, even in this market, it feels insane. There are FHA deals going on right now that you think might not be possible. They really are. So I love that. Patience. All right. So we have had a wonderful time tonight. Let's give a huge round of virtual applause to our panelists. Thank you very much. Great information. Thank you for sharing all of your experience. That's a lot more than I've been through. I never actually did the house hacking thing. So I'm just like super curious to live vicariously through all of you guys. So for those of you that like to stick around and do a little networking, Malcolm just put our networking room up in the chat. That's a Kumo space link, and that's just this little virtual room that you can walk around in. You get a little like halo around yourself with your audio range. It's kind of fun. So if everybody would like to join us in the Kumo space, that would be fantastic. Hopefully some of our panelists are willing to do that so they can continue to share their experiences. If you have individual questions for them, I'll be there for a few minutes before I have to go down and get a late dinner. But thank you again, everyone. This was so informative for all of us. Thank you for sharing your experience, and we hope to see you all next month. I'll see you in Kumo Space.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.